I'm Yvonne Okwara Matole. Good evening. The big story tonight, the Ministry of Education has deregistered St.Theresa Girls Senior School in Nakuru County. It's alleged that the school management had opened examination papers before the set time and conducted tuition for students against the ministry's regulations. Meanwhile, one student in Nairobi, another in Wajir are to be arraigned in court after they were caught with mobile phones in the exam room. These cases have come up even after the Ministry of Education introduced new security measures to curb cheating. Education CS Fred Matiang'i says students found guilty of examination malpractice risk being excluded from the examinations altogether, rather than just being disqualified during marking. The Ministry of Education and the Teachers Service Commission have vowed to take firm disciplinary action against centre managers or officials involved in such misconduct.
Kenyans being who we are, it is still unfortunate, and it is my duty to let you know that there are still a few center managers, well-trained teachers, who still have the old habits. And the habit they are continuing with is trying to open the second paper. When the children have started the first paper, they try to open the second paper and attempt to do whatever with it. My warning to them is very clear, is that the government is watching.
We shall deal with these teachers mercilessly, because I think they are ruining the future of our children, and we can't allow that. So we have put in place panels to be listening to the discipline cases, even as the law takes its course. And these teachers will, immediately we get the reports and they are interdicted. The cases will be listened to, and of course, we will dismiss and deregister these teachers.
All right, and we'll be discussing this tonight. Of course, we'll have our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna, who joins us to give us some more insights. We'll also be speaking to education specialists and consultants, Dr. John Mubu, as well as Amos Kaburu, in just a moment. But first, our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna. Good evening, Sophia. The examination's still ongoing, but so is the crackdown.
Indeed, good evening to you, Yvonne. We are in that period for the administration of the KCSE examinations, the theory paper, the administration beginning on the 6th of November throughout the 29th of this month. Over 600,000 candidates sitting the KCSE examinations this year. And as you rightfully stated at the top of the show, one school being deregistered today, St.Theresa's Girls Senior School that's in Nakuru County, was deregistered. And this following the head teacher being found to have opened examination materials before the stipulated time. Other issues that he was found and the teachers in that school to have breached as far as the Basic Education Act 2013 is that last week teachers were coaching students or candidates for these examinations. That is not allowed in the regulations. And also teachers were present during the administration of these examinations. Remember, one of the reforms was that during the administration of such national examinations, only candidates and the parties that are overseeing this particular exercise should be in the school. However, of reprieve with this deregistration of that school is that the candidates, 17 of them who are sitting the examinations, will still be able to do so, and the 115 other students from that school will be relocated and settled in other schools. Yvonne.
So that at least the students aren't punished for somebody else's alleged misdeeds. But indeed, this crackdown is not new. This is the second year in which we are seeing very stringent measures taken with, against cheating and with respect to security during the exams. Just take us back to last year, which was when we were introduced to this by the Education CS.
Yes, Yvonne, and even the efforts we are seeing now and several arrests that have been made today, last week, is all to ensure the sanctity of these national exams is maintained. And that confidence that received a huge boost last year does not wane. And last year was significant because history was made for the first time. There were no national examination results being cancelled. That was significant. However, with that, also perhaps painting a picture of what had been happening with the cases of cheating is that the highest mark went down. And perhaps to paint a clearer picture of how significantly down it went, is that the highest mark in the 2016 KCPE results was 90 places lower compared to the best results in 2015 KCSE results. So in essence, the highest scorer in 2016 would not have been in the top 90 in 2015. So that was one of the implications of this move to ensure that the exams are cheat-proof, which they were in 2015, in 2016, I beg your pardon. However, this came on the back of another historic moment, in the worst ever moment for the administration of national examinations here in Kenya, because in 2015, again, the highest number recorded there of examination results being cancelled, totaling about 5,101. And that is what, when the CS had come into office, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, following those results, indicating and even apologizing to the country and saying he would put measures in place to ensure this does not happen again. So he put in place some reforms last year. One of those was overhaul the Kenya National Examination Council, that's the board of NEC, replace it, all of it, brought new faces in, and that was to enhance that public confidence that the administration of examinations is now in different hands that perhaps will do their best to ensure that the candidates do not get a raw deal, or cartels or other parties do not interfere with the same for whatever gains. And then there was changes in as far as the third term, and this is the term in which examinations are administered. So cases such as no contact between the students in that term with the outside world, including their parents. So there were no prayer days. Those used to be huge. There was a little bit of outcry about that. So no prayer days, no visiting. AGMs as well were to be held in the first and second term, and any other extracurricular activity was not to be held in the third term, to just make sure the students are preparing for the examinations and all their focus is on that. Another of the changes I mentioned earlier, during this time of sitting exams, only the candidates and the requisite personnel for overseeing and managing that were to be in place. Also, there was a bigger, huger, more accountable task for the head teachers, in that the buck would stop with them. Everything that happened in these examination centers, the head teachers would be accountable. So they would not pass the buck or say this and this did not do that. It was all in their honors to do. Other than that, the semester was extended at least last year for the second part. And these are just some of the changes we saw, including those security measures that were installed. And as far as the materials for examinations, Yvonne, are concerned, barcodes being put in place, more tamper-proof material to seal these materials to ensure that people are not able to easily get access. So will these measures still bring the results we saw last year? We'll have to wait and see, Yvonne.
Yeah, that's right. Sophia, thank you very much for that, reminding us about some of those security measures that have been put in place to sort of safeguard the integrity of the results and the outcome of students in their 8 and 12 years in school, respectively. Sophia Wanuna, our lead reporter, setting the stage for us to now start this conversation, the integrity of exams today. But let's take a look at just what is at stake with some of the numbers. Sophia mentioned this a little bit when we spoke with her just now, but let's take a look at some of the numbers of students that we are dealing with this year for both the Kenya Certificate of Secondary Education and the Kenya Certificate of Primary Education examinations. You can see some of those numbers. There's about 1.6 million students nationally, with a little over 1 million who's already sat for the KCPE exam, just concluded, and over 600,000 who've been registered for the KCSE examination. And these are some of the new security features this year. The candidates' names have been printed on the exam sheets, and they're also required to give in a colored passport photo, their index numbers and the school names and codes. So this is what is there. And of course, this is the interesting one, because remember, the issue of just who marks the examinations. Now, there are sophisticated marking scanners that will be used, especially for KCPE, where you shade the ellipses. So far, as Sophia said when we spoke to her, one school has been deregistered, at least 4 teachers have been arrested, and 2 students have been implicated in exam irregularities this year. Okay, so let's talk about this. Dr. John Mugo and Amos Kaburu both join me to discuss this issue. Dr. Mugo is joining me from Nyeri County. Dr. Mugo, good evening. Good evening to you as well, Amos. Let's start with you, John. Your thoughts on where we are now, these reforms that have been instituted. Do you believe they're enough to ensure the sanctity of the process?
Yeah, thank you, Yvonne. Given the circumstances we are in, I applaud the efforts that are being put by the Kenya National Examinations Council to really ensure that the sanctity of the examination is safeguarded. But what we are seeing today for me is shocking, also rather embarrassing that a school that is even bearing a saint's name can be caught in such irregularity. I hope in my heart that it's not true, because if it were true, then it sets us wondering what is wrong with our society. How can teachers and adults in such a school that is supposed to be developing values be the ones really demolishing values? So those measures to ensure that we are sure that the candidate sitting for that paper is actually the one are good. And maybe we should do more of that. But what is to understand, Yvonne, is that the cheating of examinations has been in our history for long. And I see it as a confluence of 2 circumstances. One is the lack of integrity in our society, not just in school, because the school just mirrors our society, but everywhere in our country. And second is these very high-stake exams that are do or die. And with the first point of lack of integrity, I think we need to go back and ask ourselves, what is the essence of our educating? We want to educate a person who is of a standing character, a person who will stand all the temptations that they will encounter later in life. And this is why we say that it is better you produce a person who gets a D but is of sound character than produce an A from a thief. But if we were to look at what really happens, it is actually not the students who are stealing. It is teachers and parents. And so this sends us back to really question on whether Kenyans reflect about what we are doing, looking for solutions which are very short-term, but really interfering severely with the future of our nation. On the second part of examinations that are really do or die, that you either pass or die, that's the other thing that needs to change, because this is driven by growing inequalities. If you look even in the examination centers and who lands in them, we have examination centers that are like a day and night. Some are highly privileged, others highly excluded, and both are supposed to be measured using the same measure. So these are some of the issues we need to interrogate. How do we ensure that we have equitable quality so that every student sitting for examination in Kenya is of level? Okay. These are things that needs to be changed, probably because surveillance alone will not be enough.
Yeah, all right. So bringing in the aspect of quality as well of the education. Amos, you are also in the education sector, but more importantly, speaking to the high stakes that Dr. Mugo is speaking about, how do we remove that? I mean, maybe it has been said that the introduction of free secondary education starting January 2018 might be one of those things that, you just have a full transition and very little attrition rate.
Thank you, Yvonne. Summarizing what we've seen, we can just put it in one word: that is indeed sad. However, coming to the question around quality, I think that there is a challenge in our structuring and design of our education, in the sense that on the continuum of aspects and indicators on education, access is given preference, but quality is always seen as an afterthought. And therefore, the design of our education does not synchronize access to quality. And that is where we have a big disconnect. So unless we find a way in which, when we are designing that, when we look at the 1,033,000 who have sat for KCPE, that we're going to give them places in the existing close to 9,000 centers or close to 9,000 schools, that we commit ourselves that it's not just about access, but we're able to give them quality education in whatever aspects we may want to refer to it. Whether it's just using summative assessments results that have demonstrated to us, then we should still be able to see that quality is coming out. But it's important what Dr. Mugo is mentioning, that we need to re-ask ourselves the question of what is the essence of education. And no better person described the essence of education rather than Paulo Freire, who says that true education is to teach them not to read the word, but to read the world. That will be an education that makes a learner to be at sync with the world, to be at peace with everyone, to be at peace with the environment. And that's what Mugo is referring to as education for character development and character formation. But for as long as our education is highly embedded in the human capital approach, which is to focus more on how education will solve the economic problems of our society by producing human resources that will fit into the available spaces, whereas these spaces are not growing at the rate at which the population is growing, then there's always intense competition, as we know from basic rules such as the survival for the fittest. Yes.
That's right. I want to talk about just the environment in which we find ourselves in, and the level of scrutiny that students and teachers and examination, invigilators find themselves now. You have the cabinet secretary himself, and he's sending out all of his senior staff throughout the country. They're spread out. I mean, we even saw Cabinet Secretary Cicely Kariuki, Professor Magoha himself, the PS, Belio Kipsang, all going out to just make sure that, all the rules are, they're abided by. So how sustainable is this outside of the cabinet secretary? I mean, he might not be CS for the next 5, 10, 15 years. Do you think there's been enough structures that have been put in place to ensure that this, goes on for some time? John?
Yeah, I think what Professor Magoha and CS Dr. Matiang'i are doing is commendable. The only thing I know is that it cannot be sustained, and it demonstrates also failure of the system and structures, because if that top management can be in the classrooms monitoring examinations, then it sends mixed signals. The right signal is that there is commitment. They are prioritizing this over everything else. The wrong signal is that the people below them who are supposed to be doing this work cannot be trusted. So how do we navigate this kind of a balance? For one, I feel there was a need for very drastic measure to be taken, and which Professor Magoha and the team have demonstrated. We needed to do a U-turn. It was not possible that, with the levels of cheating and all that where we had reached, we needed someone bold to say, no, we have to change direction. And I think what we have seen even with the deregistration of a center, it sends very strong signals that this is not business as usual. But then on the other hand, it brings the country to focus on examination as though this is what is determining our future. And it's not. That is the fact. So the challenge is, how do we build structures? How can teachers be trusted moving into the future? How can the quality and standards officers, who we are paying so much of our taxpayers' money, do their work? How can parents be actually the ones safeguarding integrity in these institutions, rather than looking for pathways of diverging justice for so many students. So there are bigger issues which probably Professor Magoha and the team will be looking at, so that these kind of structures can be sustained. But on the other hand, having a policeman who is carrying a rifle in the examination room, having the CS standing next to you and you're doing a paper, I think putting myself in the place of the examinee or of the pupil, I wouldn't like such kind of a situation in my examination room, because it could cause either confidence or total fright.
Yeah, I mean, being in an exam room in itself is quite nerve-wracking. But you raise an interesting point, John, that he had to put in drastic measures. I mean, I think even the year before last, we had the highest number of, examination results being cancelled. So he had to put in drastic measures to rout out the rogue elements in there. So now that we're talking about some more sustainable measures, Amos, where do we go from here? What do we do next year and the year to come to ensure that, the sanctity of the exam period is catered for?
Yvonne, I'll pick up from what John said. What is most important is to ensure that wherever we put the surveillance system is where it is sustainable, where we have the numbers. It's not possible that a cabinet secretary with about 8 directors and about 8 directors of the semi-autonomous government agencies, 47 county directors of education, 290 sub-county directors of education are capable of providing surveillance to over 29,000 examination centers. It's impractical, it's impossible. So what we need to first of all focus on is how do we ensure that the smallest units possible are capable of providing such surveillance and such support systems, as opposed to expecting the top managers to be the one who are performing these functions. So we need to be looking at structures around the ward level, what are the curriculum support officers, the quality assurance officers at that level, school-based management quality systems such as the head teacher being there, and they are the sources of entrusting.
Amos, allow me to ask you this. Could it be that they've already started to put in place some of these measures, considering the fact that head teachers are now personally liable for any irregularities that take place, and that they're the ones who physically have to go in, collect the papers, make sure they're properly sealed, and there's been no mischief? Could that be a start now that people are being held personally responsible? Yes,
that could be a start. The only disconnect we have is that when you have a head teacher who is an accomplice to the same lack of integrity issues, that's why it becomes a serious problem. But however, it is such a great step to start with the head teachers, because this is what is sustainable. At least every examination center has a head teacher. So you're talking about close to 29,000. So if we're able to tap into them to be some of the early adopters who adopt the style and the approaches and the mechanisms through which the CS and the team at the top desire, then it makes more sense. Otherwise, we haven't seen any change as far as the supervision and the conduct of examination, the way it was done in 2016 and the way it was done in 2017. And that's what qualifies what John is saying, that we haven't seen sustainable mechanisms. We more or less seeing a repeat of 2016. And there is, however, one thing that I think that has been premised upon how we are managing examinations, that the results are more or less determined by cheating. But I want to assure Kenyans that by the time the results are coming out at the end of this year, the pass rate will be higher than what it was last year, because I'm very, very sure of one thing, that our students are equally hardworking, our teachers are hardworking, and so I am seeing a situation whereby we may be going back to what we were doing in previous years. Issues such as moderation of examinations that was not being done. I am likely, I'm very convinced that in the next 1 or 2 years, we are likely to be going back to the same scenario, because Kenyans are hardworking, and it's impossible to just imagine that the way students scored last year is the same way students are going to score.
So do you think we will have more A's this year?
I am definitely sure that we are going to have more A's. The pass rates will go high because people have been preparing. And so those who know that your results are determined by your level of effort have definitely been preparing. And so the results will come as a surprise to very, very many other people, unless we go back to moderation.
Okay, and you mentioned moderation, but then the other big area where we see a lot of mischief is in the marking of examinations. And this was addressed last year, and it seems to also be addressed this year with, having special machines that will mark particularly the KCPE. John, tell us about that. Does this inspire confidence for you in the final outcome?
I think, yes, it is a good measure to continue doing what can be done to eliminate subjectivity in the marking of examinations. We know that while KCPE is easier to mark using a machine because it's just a shading and one is left with only the inshine composition to deal with, KCSE presents a really tough thing to use. What I can see as a future of this examination, because even the new curriculum stipulates that we'll have one end of cycle examination after the 12th grade, we need probably to move these examinations to ICT-based. Why does one have to wait for human beings to go mark things for 600,000 people and then wait for 3-4 months to get your results? These results, I think, leveraging on the advantage of ICTs now, it is possible that students in the future can be just sitting on a computer doing their test and within a day having their results and moving on. So while this measure is moving us into that direction, I feel that we are probably, we need radical solution to migrate now to a new system all through.
All right, we have been discussing the issue of the sanctity of exams. I want to take a small commercial break here on The Big Story, but when we return, we'll be speaking about quality. I think both of my guests have talked about preference to education versus the quality of it, and indeed whether the new curriculum could be that solution that removes this sort of high stakes that is associated with exams in this country. Dr. John Mogo, Amos Kaburu, continue to stay with me. This is The Big Story. We'll be right back.